Sovereign citizens in the courtroom. Today I'm going to do a video analysis of a sovereign citizen in New Hampshire who defends his rights in the courtroom while using the sovereign citizen arguments. The individual's name is Evan Pierce, and he is charged with possession of marijuana and resisting arrest. It appears that he has a sort of hearing and then a sentencing following the hearing in which he uses the sovereign citizen arguments to defend and argue his case. Today I'm going to talk about the merits of his arguments. Some of them are creative and interesting. I'm going to have some commentary on them. We're also going to look at the judge, how the judge reacts, how the prosecutor reacts, how the courtroom reacts to these types of arguments. We're going to give him his due where it is deserved, but we're going to poke a little fun where it is deserved also, all to get a better understanding of the sovereign citizen movement, the arguments they use, and we're also here to have a little bit of fun. So if you enjoy this episode, if you like this idea, please subscribe to my channel, Joe Pometto Law Show. I am attorney Joe Pometto, using my legal skills to analyze other situations in the courtroom or out on the street. If you subscribe, like, or share, I will make more of these videos. It gives me positive feedback. Also, it tells YouTube that people are watching my channel, and they will give me higher rankings and create a nice feedback loop that will incentivize me to create more interesting and fun videos like this, which are also informative. So let's begin. We're looking at the case of Evan Pierce in New Hampshire and his sovereign citizen arguments.
I think if juries knew that they had the power to judge the law, in addition to the facts of the case, then a lot of the outcomes might be different, and some people who are nonviolent, peaceful people, haven't hurt anyone, maybe simple possession of drugs or something like that, would get off and not have their lives ruined.
Just a little comment on her. I believe she's part of the organization that made this movie. You know, juries have a lot of power, and I think that most juries understand the power that they have. There's an interesting concept in the law called jury nullification, where a jury can decide to find someone guilty, or find someone not guilty, even when they were obviously guilty, based on overwhelming evidence. There's an interesting case where a father killed an individual who had sexually abused his child, and the jury fully acquitted him. At the same time, a jury may convict someone who is in fact innocent. Juries have a lot of power. Whether they understand the power they have or not, I don't know. But ultimately, it is a jury of your peers who's going to decide guilt or innocence. It's not really the government. The government has a hand. You can get angry at the government, but a jury of your peers. And that's a right. That's a constitutional right. Okay, now let's get started.
Truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
Yes.
Up here. Have a seat. State your name and address. Tell me your side of the story.
Evan Pierce. I'm homeless in Keene area. I was just enjoying myself at Pumpkin Fest when I was kidnapped by agents of the state. My property was stolen from me, and I was put in a cage for almost 2 days. This was in violation of...
I have to say, I kind of get a kick out of his characterization there of he's at a Pumpkin Fest. I imagine that's some sort of beer drinking festival. He's at Pumpkin Fest, and he was kidnapped and put in a cage by officials of the state. Yeah, Mr. Pierce, that's pretty much how it goes. Getting arrested is a lot like being kidnapped, and when they put you in jail, There's bars. Yeah, you're in a cage. And so he's kind of right about that, and it kind of makes me laugh that he addressed it that way to the court. I don't know if it scores you any points, all right, but sometimes I think that the courts are too lackadaisical about putting people in jail and supporting people getting arrested, and it can be a very traumatic experience. I deal with this with my clients all the time, traumatized by being arrested and being put in jail. They feel like they're being kidnapped and being put in a cage. I mean, I'm not. Obviously, certain people need to be arrested and put in jail. But that it's just a funny characterization he had there.
My natural rights, my right to life, liberty, and property, and my rights as a sovereign individual, and was also in violation of Article 2 of the New Hampshire Constitution, which states that all men have certain natural, essential, and inherent rights, among which are the enjoying and defending life, liberty, and property, or, not property, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and in a word, of seeking and obtaining happiness.
So one thing I missed there was that he mentioned that he had his property taken away. Now that's a big current issue in the law as far as forfeiture is concerned, and when the police are able to keep the property of someone that they arrested and property that is connected to that arrest. Generally, if it doesn't have evidentiary value or if it was not an instrument of crime, the police can't keep it. You'll see later on he's referring to his marijuana as the property that was taken from him. And yeah, it is your property, sir, but it's property that is in violation of the law. So they can take it and it can go away and you're not going to get it back. I found that a little bit funny. Now, he starts talking about violation of his natural rights, and he gets into the rights of a constitution. Here's the thing with the Constitution and constitutional law. This is very important. There are very vague statements, clauses in a constitution, and there are more specific ones. Some of the vague ones, pursuit of life, liberty, happiness, they don't really have any meaning. There's something nice to start to lay a foundation for the document to start with, to lay a foundation to the story that the document is going to tell, the story of a country and who they want to be and their guidelines. But as far as legal meaning, they often don't have any legal meaning. Now, there are instances where the Supreme Courts of either states or countries will read into those general clauses. But you got to understand the law, the more general something is, the less power it's going to have in the law. The more specific it is, the more power it's going to have. He's citing these general clauses. Liberty, they can mean anything.
Ask you a simple question. If it's against the law to be in possession of marijuana in the state of New Hampshire, do you think you have the right to possess it?
Yes, the law is in violation of both my natural rights as a sovereign individual and in violation of the Constitution of New Hampshire.
Okay, so he makes a really good point there, is if he says that the law is in violation of his natural rights, in violation of the Constitution of New Hampshire. If the prohibition of marijuana was in fact in violation of the Constitution of New Hampshire, that law would need to be struck down. Again, though, he's citing extremely general clauses. What he doesn't understand is that most constitutions, state or federal constitutions, they only speak on specific subjects and then they leave other subjects unspoken on. When that's the case, the governmental bodies are going to have the power to to write laws and legislate in any area which is not specifically prohibited by the Constitution. So you have to think of the Constitution as a document that restricts the power of government. The power of government is almost, and this is a little bit scary, and I get it, but the power of government is almost complete. They can do anything, okay, except the powers that the Constitution takes away from them. And in that way, the Constitution protects your rights because it restricts the power of the government. But if it doesn't specifically restrict the power in a certain area, then the government can legislate in that area with impunity. And I can tell you that the criminal law is an area where governments are given vast powers by the state and federal constitution in the United States. They fill in the blanks where they want. There's almost certainly nothing in the New Hampshire Constitution that to prevent the government from banning marijuana or other substances. Almost certainly not, except those general clauses which he cites. Therefore, that law banning marijuana is almost certainly constitutional in New Hampshire. Now, as far as natural rights are concerned, we can argue about what rights we're given with, what rights we're born with, what rights God grants us. But unless they're in the jurisprudence, the law of the country itself, they're not going to be protected. And what you really need to do is advocate for those rights to be placed into the constitutions so that governments can no longer infringe upon them. Because absent them being in the Constitution or some sort of specific law, okay, the Constitution isn't going to save you. Rousseau, considered a very revolutionary philosopher, said, he stated, I can't remember the statement right now. Okay. Man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. Man was born free, but everywhere he is in chains. Now, then maybe this is something I could get into later on, but essentially what he's saying is in the natural state, man is free to do whatever he wants, and then as society builds it up, as society, it puts chains on us. I would actually argue the opposite, that man is born in a very brutal state of nature in which they have no privacy and they have no rights at all. Another man can violate their rights at any time with no recourse. But a societal structure reverses that. The sovereign citizen argument is sort of a Rousseauian argument, where they state that they were born free and they never allowed for laws to be placed on them. But actually the opposite is true. You're born into a form of domination where other men who are stronger and more powerful than you, have greater groups or greater organization, can dominate the other men. Okay? It's the state of nature is one based on brute force and power. When we have a system of laws and government, that is when true freedom and true privacy can be felt. So the natural rights, that's something to get into. I believe that there are certain rights that must be protected in order for our freedom to live on and in order to have a peaceful and civil discourse in society. But there are some rights that are, and many of them that are far from absolute. Okay. I'll get off my philosophy bench here. Let's listen to some more Evan.
It's in violation of Articles 2, 4, 5, 6, and Article 10, which is the right of revolution. Government being...
I'm willing to bet all of those articles are pretty general, so I doubt that they ban the state from regulating marijuana.
Instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the whole community, and not for the private interest or emolument of any one man, family, or class of men. Therefore, whenever the ends of government are perverted, and public liberty manifestly endangered, and all other means of redress are ineffectual, the people may, and of right, ought to reform the old or establish a new government. The doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind.
I have to say, New Hampshire has that in their constitution. I don't know if Pennsylvania does, but that right of revolution clause is a badass clause. It is a badass clause. I love it. I think it's great that it is in there. And you know, that's how this country was founded, was on men standing up to tyranny. But whether that clause is going to prevent the state from regulating marijuana when the state has decided through the democratic processes that marijuana is an evil that needs to be regulated, that's not going to, you know, that's when the democratic process supports something like that. I mean, if you're invoking the right of revolution because they ban marijuana, good luck, sir. Good luck, sir. You're going to need some greater oppression than that. But that's still, I think that's a badass clause. It's also a fairly general clause, but I like that it's in there to keep the government in check.
Position that the laws of the state of New Hampshire do not apply to you?
It is my position that the laws of the state of New Hampshire are immoral and in violation of both my natural rights and the Constitution. I'd like the court to point out the victim.
If you want to invoke the right to revolution, my advice is to go to your legislature, go to the halls of the state representatives and the state senate and the governor, and make your voice heard and lobby for the laws to be changed. And then if you don't like it, vote the losers out of office. Vote them out.
In the case.
Certain crimes that are victimless. These laws were pertaining to marijuana was passed for protection of society because somebody in their infinite wisdom thought that possession of marijuana was a crime.
This is actually a good point that the Sov Sits bring up, is that this is a victimless crime. And I think we're seeing in a movement in our society to treat victimless crimes with more leniency and to focus more on crimes that actually have victims, because he's right. Drug possession crime like this is essentially a victimless crime. Now you can make the argument that somewhere along the production and delivery and sale of those drugs that there are victims, etc., etc. But this crime in and of itself, possession of marijuana, it is a victimless crime. This is a good point. This is something that needs to be spoken to in our society so that the laws will change and the laws will get better. So I like when the sovereign citizens make that argument.
Are you
It's not up to me to argue whether possession of marijuana should or should not be a crime. My job is simply to determine whether or not you did in fact violate the laws of the state of New Hampshire in the sense that you may or may not have had marijuana in your possession and that you may or may not have resisted arrest.
The judge is absolutely correct there. Judges, a judge is just is an extension of the judicial branch. Okay, the judicial branch of a government applies the law. They apply the law. They don't write the laws. Okay, a judge is not meant to write the law. A judge is only meant to apply the law. Now, it is true that because we live in a common law country, that certain judicial decisions become law, but that's only because it hasn't been spoken on by the legislature. Generally, at any time, a legislature can write and change the laws. If they don't like a judge's decision, they can change the law. Okay, that's the point of the legislature, and that's why you vote for them. They're the voice, the organ of the people. But a judge sitting here in this gentleman's position, he really has very little choice. Judges do have discretion in certain areas, but sometimes they have very little discretion as to what they can do. They just have to follow and apply the law.
I don't pass the laws. It's not up to me to decide whether a law is right or not right.
Who do you work for?
He works for the state of New Hampshire, and I believe we've been through this routine before. Is there anything further you wish to say regarding these matters?
I don't think this was a fair trial because both the judge and the prosecutor are on the same team.
I gotta say, I got a kick out of that one. But who do you work for? Who do you work for? But the judge didn't even want to answer. He's in the state of New Hampshire. And, he goes, the judge and the prosecutor are on the same team. That kind of cracks me up. Now, truth be told, they're not on the same team, but in a way they are. They are in the sense that their pay, the money that they get, comes from the same taxpayer base. They're paid by the government. They're paid by the state or the county or the local government. But they're supposed to be separate institutions, right? You have the judge and you have a district attorney head by a lead district attorney. They're separate offices. There's supposed to be a lot of firewalls in place so that they act separately and independently. I mean, you could throw the public defender in there too. Okay, a public defender is funded by the state or local government. So you could have a prosecutor, a judge, and a public defender all in the same room working on a case, and they all get paid by the same people, right? And the public defender is the criminal defense attorney defending the defendant, and the prosecutor is prosecuting the crime on behalf of the state, and then the judge is supposed to sit there in judgment also on behalf of the state. So it is a kind of messed up system, and that's why a lot of defendants want to hire private attorneys, because private attorneys aren't paid by the government. We're paid by the client only. However, most public defenders do really good jobs, and most of these things are kept pretty separate. But he's right about that. They're all paid from the same sources. It's kind of funny, and I kind of liked how. I mean, in a way, I get a kick out of sovereign citizens because they just sort of troll the court system. But at the end of the day, the court system it's pretty fair, and there's no good alternative. I mean, it's like they say about democracy. Democracy is not. What Winston Churchill's quote was: "Democracy is terrible, but it's better than all the rest of the forms of government." So when your choice is when you have a bunch of bad choices, you want the least bad. That's what democracy is, and that's essentially how the judicial system is set up.
You have the right, if I should find you guilty, you have the right to appeal, take that issue to a higher court.
Nothing further.
Based on the evidence before me, I do find that you had marijuana in your possession. I am satisfied that the chain of custody indicates that the substance that was removed from your body in your possession is the same substance that was delivered to the state crime lab and analyzed as marijuana, and it is the same substance that has found its way back to be exhibit number 1 in this case. Also find that you did resist arrest. It may have been a peaceful resistance. I don't know whether you want to call it dropping to the ground, lying on the ground, or whatever, but you did, in a peaceful way, attempt to hinder your arrest, and I will consider finding you guilty on that complaint also. What is the state asking for?
With regard to the marijuana, standard fine, $350 plus the 24% penalty assessment, and on the resisting arrest, a $500 fine. All of that suspended for 1 year upon judicial review.
So you're asking for the $500 fine on the resisting to be suspended
1 year.
for 1 year, and the fine on the possession of marijuana to pay?
Correct.
Do I get to say what I believe the sentence should be?
You do?
Not only should I not be further aggressed against or forced to pay any fines, I should be restituted pecuniarily for the time I spent in jail, and I want my property returned to me.
Again, I just get a kick out of I do get a little kick out of them trolling the court system. And he says, and this judge handles it very artfully and professionally. And this gentleman, if he's going to make arguments like this, you do it in an artful, professional, and in civil manner, like he did here. He said his piece. He made his beliefs known in a very professional and standard way, and that's the way to do it. He wants his marijuana back. I mean, he wants his property back. I get a kick out of that. It ain't gonna happen.
When you say your property, you mean your state's exhibit?
Yes.
One?
Yeah.
Not only will I deny that request, but I will grant a motion when it's filed to destroy it.
Oh, he's gonna destroy.
I hereby announce my intention to appeal this decision, and I request a stay of sentencing pending appeal.
Oppose the sentence as far as the payment of any fine that I should impose. That will be stayed until you've completed the appeal process.
I want to make it clear that I have no intention to pay any fines.
I will still let you complete the appeal process if you make it your intention to not pay the fine. You end up going to the House of Correction.
Well, I thought that little bit was interesting there at the end. He said he's not going to pay the fine, and the judge says if you don't pay the fine, then you're going to go to the House of Corrections. That's an interesting one. That's longhand for jail. If you don't pay your fine, the court can issue a warrant and can send you to jail. So I want to run into what this sovereign did. Number one is he presented all of his arguments in a very clean, concise, civil, and professional manner. And if you're gonna, and that's how it should be done. Okay, because if you want to sort of make a point about your rights and your beliefs, that's the way to do it in a civil and professional manner. Definitely not during the arrest. Definitely not during the arrest. You go to the courtroom and make your arguments as they are made. Number two, he made some interesting constitutional arguments, which are actually true. If a law violates the Constitution, then the court technically should not be applying it to you. You can appeal, take that to a Supreme Court, and possibly get it stricken. But what this gentleman misses is that he cited a lot of general language that's not going to apply to whatever law you want it to apply to. Okay, you got to specifically show that a statute is in contravention of the Constitution. I can tell you, I've studied constitutional law. States have a lot of leeway when it comes to criminal law and banning substances. And so this is going to be this is a constitutional law. And I guarantee you that the Constitution in New Hampshire doesn't have anything specific that would allow that law to be taken down. Almost certainly not. The Constitution in New Hampshire has a revolution clause, which is pretty badass. I guess that's why their motto is live free or die. I don't know if that's in the Pennsylvania Constitution, but it's really pretty cool. I'm trying to think of what else. Natural rights, constitutional rights, statutory rights. This is maybe I should make an entire video on this, okay? And I could take it back to Rousseau and some of the philosophy, all right? But in my opinion, our rights are not, our God-given rights are not going to truly be felt or protected until they're written in paper, in the law, okay, and implemented through a society and a governmental system. Outside of society, you may think you have rights, but you actually have no rights at all, because someone can violate your person in any way without any retribution whatsoever. So your rights are actually the safest within a government and societal umbrella. That's all I have today. I hope you enjoyed this sovereign citizen analysis. I'm going to do some more videos. And we'll go from there. Leave some comments, or if you guys have some videos you want to share with me, I'd be happy to, take a look at those. You could even send them to me. I'll put an email address, or you can send them to my my Facebook at Joe Pometto Law. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, like this video, leave a comment, and share this on social media. This helps YouTube pump up my rankings. Then I know people are watching, and it gives me a positive feedback loop where I create more content because I know I have an audience and fans who appreciate it. Thank you very much. Attorney Joe Pometto of Joe Pometto Law and the Joe Pometto Law Show signing off.